The door to Calloway and Marsh didn't slam, it sealed. That particular sound, the soft, hydraulic click of reinforced glass meeting its frame 32 floors above the Vancouver waterfront, had always reminded Bridget of a vault closing. And tonight, standing at her desk long after everyone else had gone home, she understood why. She was the thing being locked in. Bridget Osei had worked at Calloway and Marsh for 4 years, 2 months, and, if she was counting, which she was, 11 days. She was the firm's senior financial analyst, not the one on the letterhead, not the one whose name appeared in the quarterly reports she wrote, structured and cross-referenced with the kind of methodical precision that made partners go quiet in meetings. But she was the one who did the work. That distinction had never bothered her the way it probably should have. She was used to being overlooked. She had a round face, warm brown skin, and a body that her aunt back in Brampton called built like a real woman, and that her old classmates at McGill had called other things. She was 31. She dressed in navy blazers and flat shoes, kept her natural hair pinned back on Mondays through Thursdays, and let it loose on Fridays, which was the one small rebellion she'd granted herself. She ate her lunch at her desk. She did not attend the Thursday wine hours. She had learned, early and thoroughly, that the less space she took up, the longer they let her stay. Etienne Moreau had never once learned her name correctly. He called her Bridget, 2 syllables stretched to 3 every single time. He was the managing director of Calloway and Marsh's West Coast division, which in practice meant he was the person everyone else in the Vancouver office quietly feared. He was tall, French-Canadian hair, and a manner of moving through a room that suggested he had never once been asked to wait. He wore charcoal suits. He smelled like cedar and something colder. He had eyes that were an unsettling shade of grey-green, and he used them the way someone else might use a scalpel. Bridget had worked 3 feet from his office for 4 years and had exchanged approximately 40 sentences with him. She had counted those too. The night everything changed, she had stayed late to fix a discrepancy in the Harrington file, a $2.3 million discrepancy that she had not created but had been handed to resolve before the external audit the following morning. She was good at finding things people tried to hide. Numbers didn't lie to her the way people did. She had always found that comforting. She was still at her desk at 9:47 when his office light came on. She heard him before she saw him, that particular cadence of footsteps, unhurried but a definitive, that she recognized without looking up. She kept her eyes on her screen. She was wearing the green dress. That was the detail she would come back to later privately, with the kind of embarrassed precision she applied to everything. She had worn it because she had planned to go straight from work to her friend Jess's birthday dinner, and then the Harrington file had landed on her desk at 4:30, and the dress was deep green, the color of a Douglas fir in winter, and it fit her the way well-made things fit. Honestly, it did not apologize for her. She heard him stop. "You're still here." It wasn't a question. She looked up. He was standing in the corridor between their spaces, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbow, the way he never was before 7 in the evening. He was looking at her with an expression she hadn't seen from him before, and Etienne Moreau's expressions were something she had, involuntarily, over 4 years. "Mem Harrington file," she said. "It's 10 o'clock." "I'm aware." He didn't move. She watched him not move for a moment that lasted slightly longer than was professional, and then she returned to her screen. "You're going somewhere," he said. "After this." She glanced down at the dress. "I was. Changed. The Morrison Gala is tonight." She knew. Everyone at the firm knew. The Morrison family's annual event was the kind of evening that generated 3 weeks of planning and 2 weeks of recap. She had not been invited. She was not the sort of person who got invited. "I'm aware of that too," she said. "Davies is there, representing the firm." She stopped typing. Gerald Davies was a senior partner whose primary skill, as far as Bridget had ever been able to determine, was his handshake. He was also, as of 18 months ago, handling the Morrison account. An account Bridget had been quietly supporting with analysis work that she suspected he didn't fully understand, but was happy to present. She said nothing. "The Morrison portfolio," Etienne said, and now his voice had changed slightly, the way it did when he was working something out in his head and wanted to hear how it sounded out loud. "You restructured it. I provided analysis. You restructured it. I read the version Davies submitted, and then I read your working file, which you somehow left on the shared drive 3 months ago." He paused. "Was that an accident?" She met his eyes. It was a backup copy. It was an 11-page structural memo that contradicted every assumption in the presentation he delivered to Morrison Industries in March. The numbers had been wrong, not fraudulently, not maliciously, but wrong in the way that comfortable assumptions always eventually became wrong, quietly, and then catastrophically. She had flagged it through the channels available to her. Nothing had happened. She had made the backup. "He's at the gala tonight," she said. "And something's going to happen with the Morrison account, and you're telling me this at 10 o'clock because I need to understand what you know," he said, "and how long you've known it." There was a silence that was different from the earlier one. The building hummed faintly. Outside, Vancouver's harbour glittered with that particular West Coast darkness that always looked, to Bridget, like someone had scattered the sky onto the water. "Sit down." He looked at her for a moment. She had never in 4 years told him to sit down, and then he pulled the chair across from her desk and sat. She opened the Harrington file on one monitor and her private analytical archive on the other. She had kept it on a personal drive, not the firm's servers. She had never submitted it officially. She had simply kept building it, month by month, the way you maintain a structural record of a building you suspect has a fault in its foundation. Not because you want it to fall, but because you need to know exactly when and how it will. "The Morrison portfolio isn't just mismanaged," she said. "It's been used." He was very still. The offshore routing through the shell structures in the Caymans was reactivated 14 months ago, 2 months before Davies took over the account. "The transaction patterns match a template I've seen in 3 other client files over the past 2 years. Different clients, same invisible architecture underneath. Someone is running money through Callaway and Marsh that does not belong to any of the names on these files." She turned the monitor toward him. She watched him look at it. She watched his face do something complicated. "How long?" he said. "Have you had this?" "I started building the picture 14 months ago. I've had the complete structural analysis for 6 weeks. Why didn't you?" "Report it." She said it calmly, without anger. She had asked herself the same question many times, and had arrived at the same answer every time. To whom? Davies' senior partner. Harrington sits on the advisory board. The 2 people above them have signatures on documents that appear in my analysis. I am a financial analyst whose name doesn't appear on any of these files. I would have been managed out within a week. She looked at him steadily. "You know that's true." Something shifted in his expression. She didn't know what to call it. She had spent 4 years reading this man at a distance, and there was no category in her internal reference for what was on his face right now. "The audit tomorrow," he said. "External team, they won't have access to my archive. They'll find the surface discrepancies, they'll flag them, and then whoever is running this will have enough warning to fold the structures before anyone gets deeper." She paused. "Unless someone hands the external team a complete picture before 9 a.m. He was quiet for a long moment. "You built all of this," he said. "Alone. Yes, without telling anyone. I told you. Tonight." He looked at her differently then. She noticed it and looked back at her screen because she was not equipped, at 10:15 on a Tuesday evening in a green dress, to process the way Etienne Moreau was looking at her. "Why tonight?" he said. "Because Davies is at the Morrison Gala, and if he gets access to the right person tonight, the window closes." She closed the file she'd been working on. "And because you came in." He was still watching her when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and whatever he read there did something to the set of his jaw. "Davies just left the gala early," he said. "He's en route to the office." She nodded once. "Then we don't have much time." The next hour was not the kind of hour Bridget could have predicted if she had tried. They worked side by side at her desk, her archive open between them, him making calls she could only hear one side of, clipped, authoritative, the kind of voice that expected to be answered even at 11 p.m. She compressed and encrypted the complete analysis, formatted it for the external audit team's intake system, and added a cover document that outlined exactly how to read it. Davies arrived at 11:32. She heard the elevator, heard his footsteps, heavier, less certain than Etienne's, and then heard them stop in the corridor. Moreau. His voice carried, "I didn't realize you were. What's going on?" The external audit team received a supplementary submission at 11:17, Etienne said, and did not move from where he was standing beside her desk. 43 pages. Your name appears on 14 of them. There was a silence from the corridor that had a different texture than any silence Bridget had heard in 4 years of late nights in this office. "I don't know what she's told you," Davies started. "She hasn't told me anything I couldn't read for myself." Etienne's voice was entirely level. "You should call your lawyer, Gerald. Tonight." She did not look at Davies. She kept her eyes on her screen and listened to his footsteps retreat. Faster now, less certain, and then the elevator, and then nothing. The office was very quiet. Etienne turned back to her desk. She was still sitting, very still, both hands flat on the keyboard, the way she got when she was waiting for her heart rate to return to a manageable speed. "Bridget," he said. Not Bridget. Not stretched to 3 syllables. Just her name, said correctly, for what she realized was the first time in 4 years. She looked up. "You should have been a partner," he said. She had prepared, over 4 years, many things she had anticipated he might someday say to her. She had not prepared for that one. "I should have been a lot of things," she said finally. "That stops now." He said it simpler, without performance. "I mean that, not as a correction of what happened. What happened was wrong and I did not pay enough attention, and I'm telling you that clearly." He pulled the chair back across from her desk and sat in it again, the way he had at the beginning of the evening. "But starting tomorrow, when this is through, we're going to have a different conversation." "About what?" "About the Vancouver portfolio. The Morrison restructuring, if there's a Morrison account left to restructure. About what this firm looks like in 6 months." He paused. "About what role you want in building that." She looked at him for a long time. Outside the harbor lights were starting to blur at the edges. She'd been awake for nearly 20 hours, and it was beginning to show in the way the city softened through the window glass. "You're asking me to help you rebuild a firm that spent 4 years not knowing my name," she said. "Yes. Why? Because I just watched you, in one evening, do something I have not seen a senior partner manage in a decade." He met her eyes without flinching. "And because I owe you an apology that I intend to earn rather than just say." She thought about Jess's birthday dinner, untouched on a restaurant table across the city. She thought about her aunt's voice, calling from Brampton on Sunday mornings, asking when she was going to stop letting those people take credit for her work. She thought about 4 years of navy blazers and flat shoes and lunches at her desk. She thought about the green dress, which had not apologized for her once. "You have 30 seconds, she said, "to tell me what the offer actually is. Specifically, with numbers." Something happened at the corner of his mouth that, in 4 years, she had never once seen happen. It was not quite a smile. It was the thing that came before a smile in someone who had forgotten how. "Partner track," he said. "Joint oversight of the restructuring, compensation retroactive to the analysis work. Your name on the Morrison account from the first document forward." She was quieted for a moment. "Retroactive to when?" she said. "When do you think is fair?" She reached for her notepad, wrote a date, and slid it across the desk without comment. He looked at it. He nodded once. "Done," he said. The external audit ran for 3 days. Davies resigned on the 2nd. 2 additional senior partners took administrative leave by the end of the week. The Morrison family, who turned out, in the end, to have been as much victims of the scheme as anyone, retained Calloway and Marsh specifically under the condition that their account be handled by the analyst whose supplementary submission had saved them from a loss that would have taken years to recover from. The name on the new Morrison account was Bridget Osey. She had her own office by the following Monday. Corner, 32nd floor. The kind of view that made Vancouver look like it had been designed specifically to be looked at from above. All water and bridge and mountain, and that particular West Coast sky that never quite decided between blue and grey. She kept her hair down on Mondays now. That was her first decision. It was not the last one, but it was the one she liked best.